everyone, and welcome to this, our first Citywide Bytes of the new year, and I hope yours is off to a great start. We've got some big things planned for 2025, but joining me right now is an old friend of the show, author LJ Cohen, last on the show in 2018. Good times, right? Good
Good
times. But
times.
she is now back with a brand new book on February 10th called Litany for a Broken World. LJ, welcome back. Welcome back to the show. It's great. It's great to have you
Thank
here.
you. Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah, yeah, 7 years it's been.
Yes.
So much has changed. Back we were at like the WEMF studios in Brighton. Oh my God, long
Kind
time
of kind
ago.
of the before times, right?
It really was. It really was. I mean, it really gives a new meaning to the terms BC and AC.
Mm-hmm.
Yep,
Mm-hmm.
because that was only a couple of years before everything went downhill.
Oh,
But
yes.
hey, we're still here. You've got new books out, so let us
I
talk
do.
about Litany for a Broken World. Walk us
Sure.
through what this one is all about, please.
Oh, Lord. So my elevator pitch is a modern adult reworking of The Wizard of Oz that takes place in a Boston homeless encampment.
I'll take eight. Sold. That is a
Yeah.
great elevator pitch. You really
Thank
got this
you.
one
Thank
nailed
you.
down. All
Thank you.
right. So I'm gonna give people the non-elevator pitch here too. Give
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
full breakdown. So this is about three different strangers who are basically drawn into this conflict between two sides, fighting over not just like Earth, but like all of reality. So yeah, I definitely get the parallel to the Wizard of Oz. One thing I read about this book though is that you wrote it over the course of about 6 years.
Six
What happened
years.
during that time?
Well, I think there's a lot of things that happened. First of all, I had just finished the last book of a 5 book series that ended up spanning a 500,000 words. And I lived with these characters in my head for 6, 7 years. And I think there's a mourning period that has to go on
Yep.
when your imaginary friends go off and do things without you. And so writing something completely new and completely different, I think took a little process time. The other thing was I tried to write this book 3 separate times and ended up ditching 20, 30,000 words each time, starting all over again. It was an ambitious story, and I don't think I had the skills 6 years ago, and I had to level up. So I worked
Yeah.
really hard to get this book to where it needed to be. So it took that time.
Yeah, and if I recall, the series that you were finishing up was that the Halcyon series?
Yes, the Halcyon Space
Yeah,
series.
yeah. Because when I was like looking up your last appearance, I thought, oh yeah, that was a long time ago.
It was a long
Jeez.
time ago. It's a whole universe ago.
Yeah. So going from that series to this book, which is the kickoff of a new series, which we'll get
Yes.
into later on, would you say that as a writer, you had really evolved or changed a lot?
Yeah, I think one of the problems of being a creative person, inherent in creativity, is that you're never satisfied because your
Yep.
ability to critique the work grows a lot faster than your ability to create the work. And for this work in particular, I spent a lot of time being unsatisfied, which
Yeah.
maybe as it should.
I think so. Yeah. I think if you write something and you think this is fine on the first go, it's probably not fine on the
It's
first
probably
go.
not fine.
No.
Yeah.
And you ditching like 20 to 30,000 words, that's a lot of words.
I
Um,
probably ditched as many words as ended up in the final manuscript.
oh, geez. What was it like to just take all that work and say, nope, garbage?
Uh,
Yeah.
Sad,
Right.
frustrating.
I'm sorry, unfinished book. I'll do better
I'm
next time.
sorry. I mean, honestly, I tried to quit this book. I really did multiple
Really?
times.
Wow.
I hit a crisis of confidence that was bigger than anything I've ever hit in my life. Ultimately, the characters basically wouldn't let me go. Um, so we are a slave to our imaginary friends.
We
And
are.
I
We
kept
definitely
coming,
are.
they dragged me back. I kept coming back, finally got it right.
Let's talk about these friends of yours. Okay. So one of your characters is a young girl whose disastrous foray through the multiverse basically cuts her off from her family and lands her in the aforementioned homeless encampment. You also have a doctor struggling with grief and really being forced to deal with their own deeply buried childhood trauma. And lastly, you have a lonely, disaffected seer who is rejected by the people that he is seeking to help. So these very, very different characters. What goes into creating them?
Boy, I think in some part they create themselves. I mean, the
Sure.
doctor character is somewhat of an analog of me and a lot of the medical people that I know. I was a physical therapist for 25 years. My
Hmm.
spouse is a physician. Part of what created her was, of course, part of what I saw happen to my medical friends through COVID, um, and burnout and hitting the wall.
Hmm.
And the other characters, I honestly can't even tell you. Writers are magpies. We collect shiny things from all over the place,
Yeah.
and then they bounce around our heads, and then they come out as people. And I knew I needed I knew I needed a whole bunch of people from different places. And honestly, I had no idea I was writing a Wizard of Oz analog until after I was done writing it. I looked at at these characters. I thought, huh, I even have a dog. I even have a dog. Of course, it's the Wizard of Oz.
Right. Yeah. Get to the end, you think, huh, neat. All right then.
Neat. Yeah.
What brings these three characters together if it's not too much of a spoiler?
No, and honestly, I'm one of these weird writers and readers and consumers of culture that don't mind spoilers, because maybe that tells you something about the story, but it doesn't tell you how it unfolds,
Ah, there we go.
right? So something about our present day Boston Earth, the borders in the multiverse are a little more porous than they should be. And this young girl comes through the multiverse, and not only is she separated from her family, but she's separated from her own body, and her disembodied spirit lands into the body of a young girl who has just died of a drug overdose. The doctor, who is in the midst of a midlife crisis, volunteers for the annual Boston homeless census, comes across what she thinks is somebody coding from a drug overdose and saves her,
Oh,
right? But the girl who wakes up in this body is not the girl who died in the drug overdose. And my truth seer gets drawn across the world walls by the young girl's distress. And so they all end up being drawn into modern day Boston, and have to fix each other before they can fix the world, because they're all a little bit broken.
I like that you said this in Boston as someone who lived there for like 8 years. How did that help you when it came to just crafting the story and all the different events?
Well, it helped and it hindered. So
Hmm.
when you're writing something that you get to make it all up as you go along, you don't ever have to worry about people saying, wait a minute, that's not on that coffee shop isn't on that corner. Because when you're writing in outer space, you can do whatever you want. So, you know, I've lived in Boston for decades. Outside of Boston, now I'm a lot further west. But I know the city of Boston. I worked in Boston. Thank goodness for Google Maps.
Right.
So yeah, you have a setting that you can play with. And I think the out that I gave myself is it's a multiverse book. So maybe it's not your Boston. Maybe it's a close
Ah,
analog. So if not everything lines up, I'm like, nah, multiverse.
exactly. Multiverse. I think that's the Marvel Comics thing right now. You don't get it? Multiverse.
Multiverse.
Exactly.
Um,
It's our new like catch-all.
but I knew this book had to take place in Boston, because one of the Genesises, I don't know what the plural of that word is.
Genesis.
Yeah, something, was hearing the stories about what was happening at Mass and Cass. So for people who aren't in the Boston area, that's the
Hmm.
corner of Massachusetts Avenue and Melnia Cass Boulevard near Boston Medical Center, that
Hmm.
became essentially a tent city after the bridge to the treatment centers in Long Island got condemned, and those treatment centers got closed, and there was no place for people to go. And so there were all these stories on NPR as I was rooting about for a new story to write. And that was part of the genesis of this one. And that's why I needed to set the story there.
Yeah, I do remember those stories. Yeah, I mean, it's been that way forever,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a serious like center for just like drug use and overdose. I know there's been a lot of
And
attempts to
mental
kind of,
health issues. And
yeah.
now there's nothing. Nothing replaced it. And the
Hmm.
fight about replacing the bridge continues.
Exactly, exactly. What was it like to revisit Boston for the writing process? Because, like you said, you lived there for forever.
Yeah. You know, it was nice. It was nice to look at Boston through different eyes, because when you're writing about it, you're looking at it sort of as a director, and you're setting a story there. And so it was like, huh, what would be a good setting? Ooh, the library, public
Hmm.
library, that's a good setting. Ooh, Boston Medical Center, that's a good setting. So, and some of the setting I frankly made up, because that's the
Sure,
prerogative of a fiction writer. We make stuff up.
exactly. Any locations that were really like on your this must be in the book list?
Definitely Boston Medical Center.
Hmm.
um, you know, Shout out to all my medical friends who are in the
Yes.
trenches every single
Yep.
day.
You're all heroes, every
Yeah,
single one of you.
hell yeah. Um, Definitely the Boston Public Library, which to me is a temple of knowledge, and
Sure.
all good things. I'm a fangirl for libraries and librarians.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I love a good library. They actually rebuilt that one.
yeah,
I think a few years ago. It looks
yeah,
awesome now. They got
it's
like,
gorgeous.
yeah,
It is
they've got,
gorgeous.
yeah, they've got this like radio station right there in the main lobby.
Yep,
Got this
yep.
huge cafe. Like, whoa, this is different. I
Yeah, it's
like this.
really, libraries are the hope of our civilization, and
Hmm.
I really wanted to highlight the Boston Public Library. So that had to be part of a setting. Yeah, and just Boston in winter is a thing.
Yes.
So I wanted to set something in the vicious teeth of a cold Boston winter.
Yeah, try to park there, folks. Have fun with
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
I think if I were to like write a book set in Boston, I would definitely have to include like the Mass Ave Bridge that goes
yep,
between like the Newbury Street area and then MIT. Because I've walked across the bridge a million times,
million
and
times.
before I lived in the city, I would walk across it when I would visit, be like, someday I'm going to live here, and I can just go home from there.
Is
And
that the bridge that's measured in smoots?
yes, look that up, folks. Look it up. It's a really, really funny story. Yeah, that probably I would say the Common, because that was a frequent
Yep,
spot for me too.
yep,
The Charles Bridge,
yep,
because it's just
yep.
such this like architectural centerpiece of the city. MIT, I think too.
Yeah, I think book two is going to have some things that happen in Cambridge. I'm about thirty
Oh,
thousand words in, and I
yeah,
think one of the characters' friends lives and works in Cambridge, and I think there's going to be some things happening there, because Cambridge is a fun place to set.
oh yeah,
You know,
yeah.
because Cambridge, like Boston, has this huge have and have not dichotomy,
Mm,
and
yep,
most people only see the have side of Boston. They don't see the
yeah.
have not side of Boston
Hmm.
and Cambridge.
Yep, yeah. Let's talk then about cover art, because looking at the cover art for this is such a cool cover.
Isn't it
It's
beautiful?
gorgeous. Who did this?
You want me to share it? Because I have it up on my screen.
Yeah, but yeah, please go for it. Yeah,
I'm
y'all
not
got to
allowed
see
to
this.
share. It doesn't let me
Okay,
share. But
all right.
the
Well,
cover art is glorious. It is a,
beautiful.
a very dear friend of mine, who is a computer programmer and a writer of spec fic and an artist, has done all my he did all the covers for Halcyon Space as well. And he comes from a background as an oil painter before he moved into digital tools. And so that's painted on an iPad by him. No AI, image generation, none of that. That is a painted cover. And since I can't draw stick figures. I literally have
Yeah,
no
me neither.
visual art ability. I basically told him that I wanted a cover that created an emotion, right? An emotion of loss and being lost, and had to be in a old brick building with graffiti on it and boarded up windows, and he nailed it. That was essentially his first concept, with very minor tweaks, was the final cover.
That is a good way of phrasing it, because looking at it, yeah, there's definitely a sense of loss and
Yeah,
despair, like being in this alien world and just not knowing anything.
yeah,
Like, yeah,
yeah. You know, and
wild.
it has subtle signifiers of speculative
Hmm.
fiction. Ooh, good alliteration there. It has the yellow, the gold of the portal in the window shining onto the street. So I
Hmm.
didn't necessarily want it to look. I wanted it to look the way it looks, right? Because it's a novel that's rooted in the here and now, in a sense of place, with a little bit of otherness to it.
I would say I don't think it looks like a sci-fi cover, but I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
It shows there's a lot. This is not just a sci-fi story. There's so much more to it.
It may be the most literary leaning thing I've ever written.
Yeah, yeah, very cool. Let's now pivot to I guess we call them the adversaries in the story. We have these two sides, and our three strangers are sort of drawn into conflict between these two sides. One is a group with the ability to travel the multiverse, and another side that is seeking to oh no, sorry, one that can travel the multiverse and wishes to exploit it. There we go.
Yes.
And the others who want to like save it. So what are these two sides like? Like, who are they?
So we have an organization called the Multiverse Travelers Network, MTN, because everything has to have a
An
three-letter
acronym.
acronym.
Exactly.
Um, and it's sort of an Easter eggy thing. I had one of the characters muse on it, that if you look at MTN, it sort of looks like maintain. and
Oh my
they're
God, yeah.
and they're this organization is trying to basically maintain its hegemony over the multiverse, right? They are in charge. If they don't like your timeline, they make it go away. Now, mind you, all of this was written and conceptualized well before the Marvel Loki
I was
story.
gonna ask that. I was about to say,
So
wait a minute.
I did not steal from them.
Did they steal from you?
Yeah, no, I think it all just, there's so much, it's all tropes, right? It's just how you
Mm,
use them. So
exactly.
the Multiverse Travelers Network has a bunch of agents that it sends all over the multiverse to basically colonize and take advantage of. And I've got these characters who really are standing in opposition to that because they want the freedom to make their own choices.
Wow. All right. All right. Now, one thing I read is that this is book one in a new series.
Yes.
What is coming up next?
Well, when I first started writing it, it was just a standalone book. And then I got to about the 2/3 mark and I went, crap. Story is bigger than that. All right, I'm going to write a sequel, 2 books. And then I started plotting out the sequel and I went, crap, it's actually 3 books.
Right.
So so book one is setting up the fight, getting our protagonists to figure out who they are, what they need to do, what the stakes are. Book two is about deciding how they're going to actually fight against this multiverse travelers network. They are very powerful. They have all the resources and they've done this before. They've snuffed out people's timelines. They know what they're doing. And so our heroes have to essentially get their resources in order and make the commitment to fight. And then book three is going to be the actual how they succeed against the multiverse travelers network and the aftermath. And I actually have titles for the other ones, which is huge because the first book took me 8 months. Actually, no, it took me a lot more than that to get a title. So Litany for a Broken World is book one. The series name is called Entangled Realities because that's what it is.
Nice. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Book two is called Every Sky a Stranger
Did,
because it
now, did
happens,
that one just kind of just like
that just
come to
popped
you?
right into my brain
Great.
because it happens, it takes, so all the characters who are in our current day Boston in book one end up shifting to a slightly alternate Boston in book two. And the two characters who are there from our world, because of the way multiverse travel works, they retain two sets of memories.
Hmm.
Their memories of who they were in their Boston and the memories of who they are in this alternate Boston. And they have to figure it all out. Because, I mean, talk about living with a sense of deja vu permanently.
Yeah. Now, I've read enough books about like time travel and dimensional travel. There's always a different set of rules. How did it work coming up with the set of rules for your worlds?
Yeah, I think as a writer, you learn that you can make rules. You can make almost any rule work.
Yep.
You just need to be consistent in your application of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so in my world, when somebody travels to what's called a close cousin reality, the closer it is, the weirder it gets. So if you're going to something that's very close to where you came from, both realities, your personal reality collapses into one, and you're both at the same time.
Okay.
So it's probably a terrible misapplication of Schrodinger's cat, to be honest. But I'm not a physicist and I don't play one on TV. So
Yeah, and this is like science fiction.
it's science
Emphasis on
fiction.
the fiction. You can make up the rules,
Yes,
and like you said though, consistently. You can't be like one
right,
thing one chapter and then one thing in
right,
next chapter.
right. So if you're traveling to a very far possibility,
Hmm.
then there's no analog of you in that world. And so you exist as yourself.
Huh.
But
I
if
like
the
that.
if the realities are so close that they hinge on just a slight change in a decision, like I decided to wear blue socks instead of red socks, then
Hmm.
the you in that other world isn't going to be all that different. And so both of those things collapse.
All right, all right. Well, folks, we're coming down to the end of this conversation. LJ Cohen, thank you so much for joining me. I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
this. And people, you know what to do. You go to LJ Cohen cohen.net. Everything is there. Litany for a Broken World out February 10th. Order right now. Get it when it comes out. But definitely check this book out. Certainly more to come. LJ, thank you for joining me. I really
Thank you so
appreciate this.
much. I really appreciate the conversations that we've had and this one in particular. Thank you.
Exactly. And more to come, definitely. All right. Well, folks, that is the end. That is the end of the episode. Thank you for joining us. We will see you all next time.